Oh nice, a plastic Demos pattern rhino. I'll be getting one of those for the Blood Angels and one for the Alpha Legion so that I can do my expanding the Legion videos. Oh. Guess I'll need a new plan then. We've all been there. You have a project that you're desperate to get started on, but for whatever reason, you just can't. Maybe you've been really busy at work and so you can't spare the time, or you just haven't got the hobby dollars in order to be able to buy that brand new box of minis that'll be just perfect for your Golden Demon diorama. I had planned to continue my Horus Heresy series with painting up some rhinos for both of the legions, but as I'm physically incapable of walking into a store for fear of missing out on those epic discounts online, I'm still waiting for my order to arrive. It is at this point that I turned to my pile of shame. Inside of this drawer is one of my deepest, darkest hobby secrets. A mostly unpainted Sisters of Battle army. Now for anyone who's checked out the channel in the last couple of months, you'll know that painting a vast number of models in a short space of time has been my best way of tackling getting through the grey plastic. But the Sisters are an army that I got in order to push my painting skills and to try out some new techniques. As such, they've mostly sat unpainted, particularly the character models who tend to be fairly intimidating. Triumph of St. Catherine, I've done the base but none of the models. Morven Val I haven't even started. Even my tanks I've got most of the way through, check out the snazzy stained glass window on this immolator, but then I haven't managed to follow through and actually complete very much. Given that I've got a bit of hobby time, I decided to commit to painting up one of these characters, and I selected Celestine the Living Saint, which I got as a birthday present from my little brother about a year ago. So here you go Tim, this one's for you. Once I'd finally made the decision to paint this model, starting to put the paint on was a really liberating feeling. I think I'd built it up in my head as a really intimidating model, as all the Sisters characters have these really cool little details which make them a little bit unique. But looking at it, it's actually just a human-sized model with a few interesting details. I'm going to be using this as an opportunity to try some new techniques and improve my painting skills, and kind of use it as a baseline to see where I'm at with my painting at the moment. As though gold armour is what takes up most of the model, I decided to start here, layering Burnt Umber from Vallejo as a base coat. I'm expecting this to sit in all of the recesses and make sure they give a really deep shadow to the gold. I layered carefully over the top of this using Retributor armour, making sure not to go into those recesses where the Burnt Umber had settled, and also then layered over with Auric Armour gold mixed with Vallejo gold in order to get a really shiny metallic gold appearance. To reinforce the shadows, I used Reichland Flesh Shade and Burnt Umber. The wings are a really unique detail that I used to practice a bit of glazing, going from a dark grey up to white on the tips. Every single hobby project, Warhammer or otherwise, gives us opportunities to improve. Whether it's batch painting an army more efficiently or focusing on a single character, there's always things that we can focus on and that we can learn for next time. Now I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the greatest miniature painter. I get by on bits and bobs absorbed from much more talented individuals posting things here on YouTube and other parts of the internet. I'd like to pose a question. What's the last miniature painting skill you picked up, and whereabouts did you get it from, and how are you then applying that to your models? Let me know in the comments down below. For me, it was the basics of non-metallic metals that I picked up over at Miniac's channel. I still use these whenever I'm painting volumes on my models. I'll have a link to that video down in the description below and also hopefully in one of these corners. Speaking of volumes, I next tackled the red cloak, which is a really, really cool part of the mini, and this is probably my favourite bit out of the paint job that I ended up doing. I started with a dark red and layered up using progressively lighter and lighter shades, focusing on the raised folds of the cloth. I'd previously done something like this with my Mephiston model, but this time I think I really did a good blend between the different layers of red. And whenever I get a new model, I build it as quickly as I can. I love the process of building, and I like to have everything in neat little boxes ready to go as soon as I feel the urge to paint. This does come with a downside, however. On a model like Celestine, it's really preferable to build it in sub-assemblies. I could feel this when I was painting the inside of the cloak using a similar method to what I'd done with the red, but with a cream colour. Every single time I was trying to fit my brush in, it was hitting on another piece of detail, sometimes that I'd previously worked on. So if you're planning on painting Celestine in particular, for the love of God, build it in sub-assemblies. You're going to thank yourself later. Don't do what I did. It's not a good idea. It was too late for me, however, so I soldiered on painting the interior of the cloak and trying my hardest not to get any of the cream colour on any of the other details I painted. Even when I did go over the lines painting the cream, I went back in with the previous colour in order to try and do a bit of a patch job as best I could. Now, the cream on the inside of the cloak is not quite as good as the red, I'd be the first to admit. I really need to come up with a good recipe for cream tones. If anyone does have any ideas for those, let me know down in the comments below. But what that does mean is that I've now painted the main colour areas of this model, so it's onto the details. And as per usual with Games Workshop models, there are a lot of them. We've got flying doves, rose petals, parchment, power sword, glowing eyes, skin tone, hair. What I'd recommend whenever you're faced with this sort of thing, particularly on Games Workshop models, is pick one detail, or one set of details, and focus on those first. It can quite quickly become a mountain too high to climb if you let yourself think about what's coming up. To this end, I started off on the little doves that she has kind of flying out, and I wanted to do the same thing as they have on their website, where they have this sort of cool psychic blue effect on the back wings of the doves. I mixed some Vallejo blue with clear blue and then watered this down into a glaze consistency. This just means watering it down so you won't be able to see an opaque layer when you first paint it on the models. You have to get quite a few layers before you get the colour. Now, I'm not the best at glazing, and whenever you're doing slightly less familiar techniques, less is more. I started off just by putting a very thin layer of this onto the backs of the doves, and then once I was happy that I could always replicate the effect, I'd come back in and expand the area which I was colouring with that blue colour. Using this blue colour really helped to break up the detail on the model. There's a lot of warm tones, reds, creams, and even the skin colour, so this little pop of blue is going to really help to set it off on the table. I used a similar technique for the power sword. I first went over with gunmetal followed by Vallejo silver to give a bit of a highlight, and then I came in with those blue colours. Now, I also tried to sketch in some lightning here. I'm not the most pleased with it, but it's something that I'll definitely look to improve in the future. When you're dealing with a project that's at the edges of your skill level, as this is for me, it's important to just keep going. I'm a firm believer in making those mistakes, and rather than trying to come in and sort out every single little bit, at a point you just have to move on. It was a similar story with the face. It didn't end up as one of my best. Starting from a burnt umber coat, I then layered up with layers of Bugman's Glow and Kislev flesh until I got to a light skin tone. Looking back at it, I could probably have pushed it a little bit lighter, but as I started to apply a Wraithbone Kislev flesh mix, I was getting some weird sort of streaking and I couldn't control the paint how I wanted to. Maybe I need a new detail brush, or maybe I just didn't have the hand control that day. Either way, I decided to leave the face at a point where I was happy with it and move on to the basing and the final details. I finished the base parchment elements with some Wraithbone, which I went over with Reichland Flesh Shade, applied some transfers, absolutely gutting my supply of transfers that I have for the Sisters of Battle, still definitely worth it. I then finished her off with a sandy wasteland base, which is what I'm doing for the rest of my Sisters of Battle. So, after about 8 hours of painting time, this is my Celestine in all her Emperor-given glory. It's okay to have things that don't turn out exactly as you wanted on a model. It gives you some areas for development, and it's much more fun to have things that you can work towards in order to improve. Not every model can be Golden Demon winning, and for most of us mere mortals, it's just nice to have a painted model on the tabletop as opposed to a bare plastic one. Next time you find yourself in a bit of a hobby rut, maybe you're still waiting on your Horus Heresy delivery, hoping mine will be here at some point in the next, decade or so. But what I'd recommend is pushing yourself to the limit, try some new techniques, and maybe you'll be pleased with the results. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to watch Darren Latham's video on painting female faces. But until next time, my name has been Ollie, this has been my hobby, and I'll see you next time.